It's freezing outside, Beryl.
It certainly is.
It's cold and literally freezing.
It's -3 degrees here today.
Yes. -3 Celsius. And what this means, of course, is something that we're familiar with in Britain. It means the trains couldn't possibly run on time. And people drive very, very slowly and don't get anywhere. Well, why are we such wimps in cold weather, Beryl? What's happened to Britain? Or has it always been like this?
No. They say the worst winter was 1947 for cold weather in this country. I was only, 3 years old at the time. I don't remember it.
Yes.
But the first really bad winter that I remember was 1962 into 63, and at that point I was about to move to London from the south coast, and I needed to take my belongings with me. And my dad drove me to my new place. We'd had standpipes in the street delivering water in that winter.
I know what you'll say. You say that people today, they don't know they're born.
No.
You say. Yeah, we had it tough in our days, quoting the Yorkshireman sketch from Monty Python.
But of course, not everybody had cars. They were much more used to walking and catching public transport.
Yes, I can remember a train journey. Beryl was going back to London and I was going back to Great Malvern, where I was studying. We left Bournemouth on the same train. I got off at Basingstoke. Beryl carried on to London. I went from Basingstoke to Reading, waited on Reading station for about 3 hours, train from Reading to Didcot. I remember sleeping on Didcot station, train from Didcot to Oxford, middle of the night, and then this small train came along with 2 carriages and a huge number of people piled in. Changed in Worcester, finally arrived in Great Malvern around about 7 o'clock the following morning. That was nationalised British Rail. It took 16 hours to do what is really 200 miles.
Yeah, nationalising isn't necessarily the answer to make things run better, I would say. It does seem that we have a big problem in this country. We reported on it being cold this winter. Certainly the first half of the winter is going to be really cold. Airports are effective, underground lines are effective, and though people drive ultra carefully in the snow and ice, you end up taking longer to get everywhere. You know that's going to happen. Whereas in other countries, they just put some chains on the tyres and they're good to go. Do we need to be more prepared?
I think we need to be more mentally prepared, certainly. Allow more time to travel, and especially if you're older, it's perhaps better to stay inside and stay in your own environment where you can be sure of what heating you've got. And
when I took the dog out for a walk this morning at about 5 o'clock, it was 100% humidity and very cold. It was freezing fog. Fog was freezing onto me as I walked and melting off my face, freezing onto my boots and onto my clothes.
What did the dog think?
Loved it. But didn't like the ice cracking under his feet particularly.
No.
But he loved the cold, sharp weather and the smells carried on the fog. I had to drive somewhere. It was so empty. I was thinking at the time, this is probably what it was like in olden days, like when Beryl was young. I thought, there are not many cars on the road. It's probably like this driving. So it is different these days because you've got lots of cars. So obviously if you're going to slip, you might hit one of those.
Yes.
Interesting, these expensive sporty cars with their wide profile tyres were suited for icy conditions.
Cars we call Chelsea tractors.
Yes, if you've got your big 4x4, or maybe they've got wide wheels so they look sporty, they're not actually great for cutting through the snow and ice. In fact, they spread the weight more and then you go and skate over it, which is not really what you want. So we're not really coping with it, but the question that I have is, what happened to this global warming? We need more of it, don't we? We need a bit more global warming to sort this sort of thing out.
What, to encourage the really bad winter?
No, what I'm saying is, look, it's cold now.
Yes.
So if people go and maybe leave their cars idling outside, if you're not travelling anywhere, pump out that carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Let's get it warmed up. Apparently carbon dioxide causes warming.
Yes.
I've heard this. So if that's the case, we need more of it, presumably, because it's really horrible being so cold. I think global warming has really let us down. as a brand, it might be seriously damaged by this, because it really hasn't done us any good, has it? But it's interesting that, just on a serious note, that when you get cold weather like this, people don't say usually, oh, there's global cooling. But when you get a bit of hot weather, for similar reasons, people say, oh, it's global warming. I think people want to get themselves sorted out and just realise it's weather.
Yes, I don't think I want global cooling at all. I don't want another ice age.
No. Just looking at the data, as I see it, the globe is warming and the trend looks to continue. As to the cause of it, well, more likely to be part of the natural trend, maybe due to the cycle of sunspots and this sort of thing, rather than human activity, but definitely warming. But if there is a sort of a break in the sunspots, which run on a 12-year cycle, so if we were to be without them, which could happen, in fact people say it's looking like it's going to be likely, although it's a chaotic system, on the sun, hot gases moving around. If that were to be the case, we might get a little ice age, a dip in temperature, but not a big freeze. But even that, a few degrees, would be enough to affect crops across the world.
Yes.
There'd be mass starvation.
Which is a dreadful thought.
I'm just thinking, we're not prepared for this cold.
No.
I was joking earlier, well, semi-joking, about the problems with global warming. The problem with global warming, I feel, is that it sucks everything else out of the room. People think that's all there is. That's the only possibility, is that everything's always going to be hot. The world is not prepared if it turned cold.
No, it's not.
And it's not just a question of putting on a warm coat.
If you can't get out to get food, then you'll starve.
Yeah. If you can't plant next year's crop because of the frozen soil, you're in longer-term trouble. So there need to be things put in place for distribution of food. Surely these enlightened times, with so much technology, there'd be ways of heating the soil. I don't know. What do you think, Norman? Norman's our technology expert here.
There are these amazing factories where they've got shelves and shelves of plants growing with artificial light and artificial fertilizers put in and automatic control. And,
aquaponics.
I'm always fascinated by these programs. And by the way, I do love the English language, because we don't know whether it will be hot or cold in the weather. Play on words there.
Yes, I saw that. Most amusing, yes. Whether the weather be hot or whether the weather be not. Whether the weather, whatever the weather. Just to summarise our little talk about the weather here, Beryl, just in conclusion, this cold snap is annoying and we're not prepared for it. But if we have a serious dip in temperatures, the world isn't prepared for it. That's something for us to pray about, that people won't be so blinkered to just think. I understand thinking about global warming, but don't just think about that.
No. I'd like to just introduce a Bible verse here.
Yeah.
The Laodiceans were blamed by John the Apostle in Revelation for being neither hot nor cold.
Yes.
Isn't that what we're trying to be? We're trying to be lukewarm.
Yes, we are. We're trying to be lukewarm all the time. Let's just embrace weather, shall we? And stop fussing about it.